Hallelujah, third.
Thank you. My question is regarding the nuclear weapons. The past few years witnessed significant rise and escalation in the conception and use of nuclear weapons, and we've been hearing, for example, the possibility of tactical use of nuclear weapons by Russia, and in the past few weeks we also witnessed, the U.S. accusing Russia of aspiring to have nuclear weapons in the space, and we also read that Iran has weapon-grade uranium that could result in significant escalation.
Question, short and sharp. Question.
So that was the context, and as a foreign minister of nuclear power, and as a scholar who did his PhD on nuclear diplomacy, how worried are you about the possibility of a nuclear confrontation or the use of nuclear weapons in one way or another? Thank you.
Okay, can we take one more this turn? Okay, let me turn to Henry.
Hi. So we've heard pretty much talks.
Come close to the mic, and either lift the mic so that it can reach you, or bend down and reach the mic.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
Right, so we've heard throughout the rising that the rise of India, and that it would require more seats, more responsibility for India in the global arena. We hear a lot about the Permanent Security Council. Yet during your rotational turn in Security Council a couple of years ago, there were quite a few vetoes. Now, that being said, what kind of a global actor would India be if it gets more seats and responsibility? And wouldn't that have a fundamental change on India's foreign policy and its nature if it would end the hedging position and sort of balancing between great powers if you'd have to take a stronger stand on issues?
Okay. Are we going to take a stand? Are we going to hedge? That's the question. Okay. And so I think you mentioned something like that in the morning of how you portray choice. Anyways.
So let's start with the unified theater commands. I've largely observed the armed forces with a lot of interest and some responsibility from outside. I had the privilege of working with them directly in one part of my career. And I would say it's much easier to in a sense, analyze why a theater command should come about. And today, the merits of that are accepted. It's a very different task to actually make it happen. And this is not unique to India. I mean, if you look at other countries who have been through that process, the US is a very well-known example, the Goldwater Nichols Act. But the whole debate which preceded and succeeded that, China has been through that experience. So I don't, some of the characterizations, the impatience of the analyst doesn't take into account the complications of the forces concerned. It's a much harder thing to do. There are many departures from the way we work. There are different assignations of responsibilities which come with it. So in many ways, you conceptualize, let me tell you, when you look at the world through theater commands, the world itself looks to you very differently than it does when you have, in a sense, three forces and each service has its own command. So I would, I understand your sentiments and your enthusiasm for this. As I said, as a fundamental concept, today that is accepted in this country, but I think you need to bear with all the the wrinkles and the second, third order effects of such a change being implemented. The feminist foreign policy, that's kind of interesting to me because in my, one of our objectives in the G20 was to push for women-led development, and to my surprise, I found it a bit of a tough sell. It didn't get as readily embraced as I thought it would. But in different ways, I see it featuring, in our foreign policy. We actually, when it came to climate change, the first question, we found that you could propagate a message and even build capabilities much more effectively if your resource people were women. So we had this very successful program called Solar Mamas, and these are people who, particularly in the Pacific Islands, but in other places as well, have been individually trained and incentivized to look after solar facilities. When it comes to development projects, today India has development projects in roughly 80 countries across the world, 78 to be precise. more than 600 big projects. A lot of these actually have a significant gender sensitivity, which is built into it. So one part of it, therefore, is actually your policy. What are your goals? What are you looking to do? But the other part of it is example. So when we ourselves today legislate that 1/3 of your members of parliament or members of legislature will be women, if we have policies which are designed to address gender gaps of various kinds in education, in health, I think that too
and you also had a statistic last time, I'm forgetting the numbers, but the number of women diplomats today in the newer batches you had
yes.
mentioned.
So I was going to kind of conclude with that. So one part of it is your vision, your goals, your mission in a way. One part of it is how do you implement that? And we certainly have seen in the Indian Foreign Service a very significant rise in the number of women. We welcome that in many ways, because I think it gives us a much broader perspective of how particularly to look at our interaction with the world. If I were to move to something completely different, which is the nuclear weapon question, the tactical use is not a new debate. There was a big debate in the 60s and 70s about the viability of the use of tactical weapons and the fire break and what it would mean, the escalatory ladder. And I think a lot of the arguments which were historical remain relevant. The nuclearization of space, that's a different ballgame. And I know that today it's part of the contemporary debate. So would I be worried about the direction of what is happening in that space? I would be, I am concerned today. Who would not be concerned if there were new conflicts and conflicts going in directions which we did not anticipate? So, it could be Ukraine, it could be Gaza, it could be something else. So the fact that you have, as we advance, as technology also matures, the same conflict today becomes much more potent, it becomes much more, in a way, difficult to game, to predict than it was before. So certainly, it would be a very, very sanguine person who would say, I have no worries. But I would balance it with the remark that, much of these debates are not new debates. On the question on the, the rise of India, what did we were in the Security Council, so what did we do? Do we hedge? Do we balance? So there's a little bit of a definitional problem here. The problem is this. It's like I decide something, you decide something, and everybody else out here is told, choose sides or you're hedging. Okay. Now, maybe what looks as a hedge to you is actually my side. I have an equal right to define a side, to put forward my views. It's not like there are higher authorities out there who will define which sides we have, and there's a binary option, and anybody who doesn't exercise a binary option is a weak link. I don't think that's a fair description of the world. I think different countries have different interests, and I don't think there are two sides to any question anymore. There are many sides to many questions. And if there are many sides to many questions, I don't think everything is a hedge. When we use the word multipolar world on the one side, and then we say hedging, balancing, swing state. The guys who are accused of being hedging, balancers, swing states, actually will now end up as poles. So they own a side, they own a position, and they're going to have interests of their own. So they're not going to be gamed by others who say, I will define the parameters, and this is the space, and this is the decision we want you to take. So the game's changing, and the game's not going to be defined.
I think now, next time, there should be 3 options in the UN votes. I, no, and rubbish. We should be able to say these are rubbish. And I think it's fair to say that, because sometimes the options given are rubbish. I think that's a good third option, sir. Our friend Michael gave you an idea for the composition. I'm giving you the idea for a voting system.
There must be an Australian word for rubbish.
Let me bring the last set of questions. I can only take 3 more. Because we are running out of time, and I promised the minister I'm going to leave him by 9:50. So 3 more questions, short ones. I don't want context, and I don't want speeches. I want just questions. And Lauren, I'm looking at you and saying this. Short, sharp question.
So I'm Lauren. No, okay. I want to ask you.
Don't open the phone, from the heart. I want short question.
Yeah. I want to ask you, after the elections this year, what India will focus in the international system, and are you considering it as a success? Thank you.
Okay, now let me bring Caitlin in front. I want the new batch to come in. I haven't heard my new ones. So please.
I didn't hear the second side.
Sorry, after the elections, what was the second part? Define success.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Caitlin.
Hello, I'm Caitlin. I'm from Australia, and I'm part of
Since you mentioned an Australian, I wanted one.
I'm part of the Ricina Young Fellows program. I would like to know, you mentioned recently that the multiple personalities of a Hindu god equated to the relationship of the Quad plus France. You said when they meet, suddenly everything starts to work. I would like to hear you speak a little bit more about that, unpack it, and then talk about what priorities you see for the Quad Summit this year.
That's a very long question, but maybe a few priorities only, sir. Okay, let's go with my friend, Mohammed.
Okay, I would like to start by saying thank
No,
you.
no context, question.
No, thank you for organizing Ricina and inviting us. Thank you. Okay, so my question is about BRICS. Last year, there was an expansion of BRICS that included some countries, including Egypt, my country. So what were the standards of choosing the new countries? What is the BRICS trying to achieve? And should the BRICS have a secretary?
Where are you from?
Egypt. He's a diplomat from Egypt.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, it's a good question. What were the standards and what were the criteria, right?
Yes. So,
No,
what
no,
were
we got
the
it.
standards? What are you trying to achieve?
We got
Got
it.
it.
We got the question. Great question. Okay.
Next.
You know, I am tempted to give it to Christoph. So, Christoph, you've been standing there patiently. Go ahead with your question, but don't make it predictable because I know what you're going to ask. Now try to surprise me.
Yeah, I tried. I would like to congratulate on the term cultural rebalancing, and that's an observation. Thank you. And this is my question goes a little bit maybe surprising way. Every great power, every rising power since Germany in the 30s to let's say China in the early 2000s, basically made itself prominent by the means of sports and games and Olympic Games. Do you think sports would be part of India's also role and presence in the world?
Yeah.
Have I
So,
surprised you?
so is that the end or can I take one more?
You can take one more.
Okay, Rian.
Thank you, Samir. I'll keep this.
You know, you had that look on your face that compelled me to give it to you.
So my question is regarding the Indian diaspora that you will find in all corners of the world. They've achieved a huge amount of success in multiple fields recently as political leaders. So I'd like to ask, how do you see the Indian diaspora and people of Indian origin contributing to your vision of Bharat?
Say that to me.
The Indian diaspora and the vision of Bharat, right? Have you engaged with them on the vision of Bharat, the Indian diaspora?
No, I still will finish this. And,
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
no, should we can stop here. We'll do
You'll take one
last
more round?
One last
Okay, good. Okay, so, okay, then we are going to do one more round.
So, I think the first question was, after the elections, what would you define as success, right? So, first of all, thank you that you are figuring out what the direction of the elections is going to be. That's very, very perceptive and wise of you. And what would I see as success? Now, so look, the last 10 years, I think in many ways, we have contributed more, we have been more visible, we have tried to shape things more, we have taken more responsibility, and I think every one of those aspects, and I can give you examples for each one of them, each one, you know, they would grow. But sometimes it's good to put things in some kind of number. And the fact is that today we are a shade below $4 trillion. We would be almost double that by the time we finish the next term. So if you look in terms of resource, you know, and what this, people use this GDP number as a marker, okay? It carries a lot of implications. You know, it means your trade will become bigger, it means your investments would be more, it means your influence would be greater, your overall weight goes up in the system. So I would say in many ways that you know, by the time we reach the end of the decade, I mean, it's very clear we would be the third largest economy. But more than that, some of the big changes which are taking place in the world, and to me, as I said, re-globalization, you know, resilient supply chains, the idea of a global workplace where there's mobility, where new businesses, you know, the chips, the semiconductors, the batteries, the electric mobility, the renewables, all of these would require a very different kind of international economy. And it's there that, you know, we can bring our human resources really into play. And to me, when I, conceptualize the world ahead, these are to me the new factors of change, and that's something I have written about in the book as well. On the Quad, you know, the analogy, analogies are meant to be useful, not always literal. But the idea was that, you know, I find it as someone who's been, you know, with the Quad all through, including the, you know, the first attempt. I find Quad actually very comfortable to work with. I mean, my Quad colleagues. There's a lot that we share in our way of work. I mean, bear in mind, culturally we are very different, but we are all deeply democratic societies, market economies, pluralistic in many ways, able to argue out positions, put, you know, things in a very direct fashion to each other. So there is a certain comfort which has actually enabled Quad to ramp up very, very significantly in a very short space of time. When I look ahead, I do see it as one of the principal mechanisms of consultation and policy making in respect to the Indo-Pacific. On BRICS and the standards criteria, yes, there were standards and criteria. These were discussed in great detail. For various reasons, it was not made public. But obviously, the standards were good, which is why we have Egypt. There were certain specific issues which were considered while taking the decision, but there was a broad alignment. You know, do these countries align with the nature of BRICS, with the positioning of BRICS, the sort of thinking of BRICS? And I think that was the overall overarching criteria, you know, thinking which really guided the selection of members, along with some kind of geographical regional balance. On cultural rebalancing, I do think that is a big debate of our times, you know, which is in a globalized world, this attempt to define who's politically correct, who is not, who will give judgment on whom, who will rate whom, who will, you know, make those decisions. To me, that's an extrapolation of the competition, you know, that the clever guys get in, you know, the smartest way of playing a game is to become the judge. Then you get to decide how the players have done. Now, I think there's going to be a tussle how this works. My sense is if the economic diversity and the political diversity of the world have asserted themselves, I can't imagine that the cultural diversity will not do that. So I see that as something is coming. Sports. You know, look, countries like sports for two reasons. They are a reflection of competitiveness. They also are a matter of pride. I think both are reasonable. I mean, and it doesn't have to be the two countries you mentioned. I mean, every country today at any game, I mean, it could be soccer. I mean, if a country wins soccer final, I mean, Argentina saw it as a matter of enormous pride. So it's, to me, taking pride and preparing yourself for sports and honing those skills is a very natural part of human competitiveness. In this country, we also see that as very important to national fitness. So a lot of what we do, you know, we have 2 or 3 big movements in this country. You know, we have something called like Play India. I mean, that's a literal translation, or
Khelo India.
Khelo India, or, you know, a kind of a fitness. So we want people to be fit. I mean, it's part, frankly, of a public health policy. It keeps a country psychologically, you know, sharp if you encourage that. And certainly, you know, a lot of us in public life, we try today through personal example to exhort people to, you know, to take part in sports, to stay fit, to do things. So I'm very much a votary of that kind of thinking. Last question, Indian diaspora and Bharat. You know, I have, yes, there have been occasions I've had conversations, but I've felt from the interactions I've had that the book resonates, the argument, the concept resonates very much with the diaspora, as it does, in fact, with large sections of Indian society.
Okay, I'm going to, unfortunately, I'm now going to use my veto as the moderator and limit this to 4 names. Last 4 names, short questions, no context, and I've already accepted all your thank yous, so no thank yous. Okay, so last 4 names, let me just pick them up. Sonam, you have been standing there, so I'll come to Sonam. I want to come to the brave Charlotte. She's not well, but she's still standing in the line, so I want to come to you and Carla. So you, Carla, and Sonam are the first 3, and maybe just because of persistence, I'll give it to Robert. So let's go, Sonam. Let's start with you.
Good evening, Your Excellency. I'm Sonam from Bhutan, alumni of Visaris Summer School of Global Governance 2017. While India is navigating the turbulent world we live in with admirable clarity of purpose, how does she plan to accommodate the concerns of Bhutan which is caught between the two giants, both of which are ancient civilizational states. Given Bhutan's dependency on India for most of its needs and surplus in favor of India, how can India assure Bhutan that the concerns of countries like Bhutan and other smaller states matter, and how can competition be healthy between two powerful neighbors instead of the kind we have seen in Maldives? Thank you.
Charlotte,
Hello.
you can bring the mic down.
It's okay. I'll just go on my toes. So there's currently an Indian delegation in London looking to finalise the FTA with the UK. We've talked a lot about the EU and the relationship with India, but with the signing of the FTA, what will relations look like now, modern relations between the UK and India, which go back so many years? Thank you.
What would the relationships look like if you signed the FTA with UK? That's a question. We'll come to Carla and then Robert. Robert, maybe you can come in. Let's go.
Hi, thank you. You've spoken about India as a civilizational power. What's your message to allies and partners who worry about the more extremist aspects of Hindutva pride? And is there a point at which these domestic issues would start to impact India's international standing? Should you do more to reassure allies and partners in the world about that?
And finally, Carla.
Thank you.
Robert, you can also, where are you from? US. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to ask, there's been a lot of talk in the last few days about what a potential second...
Can you come closer to the mic?
Yes.
We can't hear you.
There's been a lot of talk about what another Trump presidency would mean for Europe. I would like to ask you, what do you think it would mean for India, also with a view to America's China policy? Thank you.
Okay. I think those four should be fine. Thank you. And I'm sorry we won't be able to take more. So apologies to the others.
Let me start with the Bhutan question. Look, India has a number of neighbors, barring one, in size at least, they're all very much smaller, and in population too, in economy as well. The neighborhood first approach is really to be generous, to be non-reciprocal, to be sensitive to a lot of these neighbors. Now, neighbors will, at the end of the day, like any sovereign country, make choices and take policy decisions which suit their interests. So, in the case of Bhutan, I think for many decades, the government of Bhutan has found that its interests are best served by having a stronger, very strong relationship with India. That has been borne out on the ground by a number of developments. Bhutan, for example, a large part of its economy is to generate electricity, and the revenues itself start to India. The revenues are obviously very helpful to Bhutan. They get a lot of tourists from India. A lot of the logistics of Bhutan go through India. So, and this is not just Bhutan. I could in different ways make the case for some of the other neighbors as well. So, I haven't, far from my seeing anything which is moving in a contrary direction, I actually see Bhutan and India doubling down on that partnership. Where if you today look in terms of the literally the investments, the financial investments in the partnership, the scale of the relationship, it's far greater than it has ever been before. Today, I've actually just had a meeting with the new Bhutanese foreign minister, and the messaging from that meeting again is very, very robust. So I'm very confident, because look, at the end of the day, how do neighbors judge you? They judge you by the routine. Okay, every day, how does the daily rub work? Is trade good? Is movement of people good? Is there tourism happening there? Are we doing enough business with each other? That's one part of it. Is our security better off? The other part of it is what happens when things go wrong. Now, this part of the world saw what happened during the COVID. Every one of our neighbors, again, barring two, got their first vaccines from India. When actually there was a fuel crisis, when there is a food crisis, when they, when for whatever reason they have a particular need, we are in many ways the natural neighbor that they turn to, understandably. Perhaps nothing could be more graphic than what happened in the case of Sri Lanka. That Sri Lanka hit, what was the perfect storm. And at that time, frankly, the rest of the world, stood there with their hands in the pocket and watched Sri Lanka go through that storm. And it actually took a neighbor like India. And we, at that time, made what was for us an unprecedented decision of putting out a package of $4.5 billion for Sri Lanka. So, finally, good days, bad days, rainy days, sunny days, neighbors finally know who are the good neighbors. And I think I have every confidence that is the case with Bhutan as well. On what would life be like if we did the UK FTA, I would say the FTA is done, if there is a balanced mutual, they get the terms right, which they would, because, they won't do an FTA if they didn't get the terms right. I suspect, both countries will stand enormously to benefit, because today, how do different economic production and consumption centers deal with each other is actually a very major point, and to the extent we can facilitate it, and certainly FTA is one way of facilitating it, connectivity is another way of facilitating it, digital flows is a third way of facilitating it. So the reason why we are engaged in this exercise is precisely because both of us see a lot coming out positively from that FTA. On the civilizational power, look, again, is India a civilizational power? Absolutely. It is a civilizational power because it has been around for thousands of years, and there is a certain, I would say, a certain gravitas and a certain mindset which comes from having a long history and approaching the world with a very considered, deliberate, responsible, mature way. Now, the question, are there people in any country, including India, who others would regard as extremists? I think it depends on your point of view. Some of it may be true, some of it may be politics. What also happens is you can have countries who would judge you by their own political standards. There are countries which have vote banks who think, therefore, the rest of the world should also have vote banks. As I said, this whole ratings business.
No, actually, now I remember, I was saying we heard something like this in the morning. That's why I asked him. Because I remember saying in the panel that I was moderating that in geopolitics there is sledging. And this is amounting to sledging. If you don't like something, you would possibly use it as a way of, unsettling you. So I'm sure some of your travels would have seen some of this sledging. Well, geopolitical sledging.
There's I don't know how many of you do follow cricket. There are two ways of doing with sledging. One is to sledge back. The other is to hit a six. So you take your choice. Okay. But the fact is, look, we are a very open, pluralistic society. We are frankly far more plural than any other country I can think of in the world. Now, to me, I'm quite prepared to have debates with people, but then all debates have to be, a two-way flow. That if people have views, they must be prepared to listen to what you have to say on those views. And my sense is today, this attempt really to impose your politics on the other person is very much a driver of these kinds of comments. There could be, the political people may have others, but I think here that may not be the case. Finally, the issue on Trump. Look, President Trump was president from 2017 to 2021. We had a very good relationship with him. He came here on a visit. My Prime Minister went there on some visits. There were, like any relationships, there were issues, but overall, if I look in those 4 years, did our relationship deepen? Did it grow? Absolutely, it did. So I'm not, it's not just, President Trump. I think if you look at India, US, from perhaps Clinton, with every presidency, the relationship has actually deepened. Now, you could attribute it to structural advantages. You could attribute it to clever diplomacy. I'm modest about it, but the fact is, it has grown, and I have every confidence that it will continue to do so.
Actually, if countries could come out unscathed, both under the Obama presidency and the Trump presidency, and were able to do well during the last 3 years as well, that would be deft diplomacy. So I think Indian diplomacy deserves a round of applause, and the Indian foreign minister deserves a round of applause as well for having done well in the last years. So as we close, on behalf of this group, I thought it would be proper if we give you a book to each one of them. And we have distributed that. Some of them sneaked in and got signatures done. I don't know if it would be possible, but at least for the 60 of the current young batch, if it would be possible to send you back those 60 books and find some time for you to sneak a signature in over the next few days, then at least the current batch could go back with your sign. And I know 200 is a big number to ask you to sign. Done. So thanks a lot for doing that, sir. And please join me in thanking Dr. Jaishankar for his time and his intervention.